Hi, morning everyone. So my name's Joe. I work for SportsLabs. We are a global test house. We deal mainly with artificial pitches, but we test from a range of things from running tracks, rugby pitches, hockey fields, and alike. We are, as I said, global. We have multiple labs across the world, and in the past 12 months, we've tested more fields than any other lab. So we're pretty busy, but I'm going to give you a quick run through of testing and the certification and sort of getting booked in, and we'll be open to any questions you have at the end. So Tim, if you could just switch the page. So as said, we are a global institute. We're on 4 continents. We work with multiple governing bodies. We do a lot of lab work as well. So we test any grass that is before it is laid, and then we test after to make sure it meets the product specification. We are ISO, ASTM, and we follow all sort of EN standards. If you next one, sorry Tim, I covered most of that in the last one. So for the FA pitch register, we conduct a multiple of tests that are all based around something called the FIFA quality standard. So it's developed by them and ourselves and the other test labs into the basics of sort of testing. So whenever I meet anyone new, they always say, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" And I always say, "I test football pitches," and they go, "What do you do? Just bounce the ball?" Annoyingly, we do that, so I have to follow that sort of answer. But there's a bit more technical to that. And generally, I try and break testing into two different sides. So one is a sort of player and safety performance, and the other is sort of a construction quality standard. So generally, we do player safety tests, or rotational resistance, whereas where we have a studded foot that is twisted on the surface to create torque, and we see how far and friction, and see how far the foot would turn, and make sure it's in a safe standard without getting too stuck in and hurting people's knees, things like that. The other side is a shock absorption and vertical deformation test. It's conducted using a Berlin athlete, which is a spring that's dropped from a mass from a certain height, and it tells us how much the surface can absorb and how much the human being can absorb. The other side is ball performance. So we do ball rebound and ball roll. And our sort of main construction sort of side of testing is a straight edge test where we are checking the levels of the pitch. We're making sure there's no deviations higher or greater than 10 mil. And by deviations, I mean dips in the surface or large bumps coming across the surface. Along with that, we check the amount of sand and rubber that are in the field and the type of carpet that is on site. And these are sort of the main sort of testing that goes on. Tim, could you? The other side of our testing is a visual inspection. These are things that we would look out for, and maybe things that you could check before we come to site. A lot of these Tim will probably go over lately, but these are sort of the main ones that we see is open joints or seams, which are basically where the carpet has come away from the attached carpet. You'll see it mainly on goal lines and penalty spots and just all general pitch lines. They'll just open up, weather dependent, things like that. Sometimes they just open. The other one is uneven infill, which if you look at some of the older pitches, they will have either a lot of rubber on them or not enough. This impacts your testing and your results at the end. The exposed irrigation sprinklers, they should also be covered in the same turf. So exposed goal sockets as well, they should be covered if they're not already covered it with the goal. And then any hazards within the field of play, which can be anything from additional goals. They can be there, but we try and keep them as far in or in goal recesses as possible. Bins, some people leave rubbish. There's always a lot of rubbish that we take note of. The other thing that we have been asked specifically by the FA to check is goals. And the amount of goals that we see on site that are not straight, they're broken, the tyres are broken, the nets are split. These are all big things that the FA are now cracking down on and want to have repaired before we turn up to site. it's not easy and it's not great, and it can be a pain because we know goals are expensive, but if they're in the best condition possible, it's safer for everyone else. And kids like jumping on them and things like that, and they're pretty dangerous in the end. Tim? So you may have received emails from myself or any of the other companies saying that your pitch is needing tested this year. Now, the FA changed last year their rules on when you should have your pitch tested. Now, before everyone got tested and it was on their test date, that they would expire again in 3 years' time as a sort of general. But they've changed it now so that everyone expires on the 31st of May each year, depending on the length of their certificate. And what I mean by this is an FA registered pitch test, you can get a maximum of 3 years. Now, they will occasionally, if there's an issue with the pitch, will give you a temporary accreditation, which could last anywhere between 3 to 6 months, and it's mainly to sort out any issues that have been found with the field. Now, I do stress so no one comes and has a go at us. We don't make the final decision on pass fails within the English FA. The FA themselves do this, and they come back to you directly with any problems that they may have. So if we go down to the sort of quality and standards of the testing, it's all based around the FIFA quality system, which you can see on screen. Now, pitches in the National League system, steps 1 and 2, need an annual FIFA quality pro test. The testing is the exact same as a FIFA quality, but the constraints are much higher. So if, as an example, if your ball is bouncing too high, you might get a FIFA quality, but it has to fall into a tighter set of values to get FIFA quality pro. The testing also takes a lot longer to do a FIFA quality, but it is of a higher standard. The FA testing is less locations across the field, but it is still based around the FIFA quality system. So your results should align with that to a point. They are a bit more lenient, the FA, I would say, but they kind of follow that guideline. And then the other requirement is in National League steps 3 to 6, where you require FIFA quality. It's very hard to find out who a lot of these clubs are, but we've done our best and tried to contact them. And they require an annual FIFA quality test just to stay in their league. I think there was a story the other day about Aylesford FC that they may have been, their testing had been completed. They had some works to be done, and it's they have to be retested now. Otherwise, they may get dot points and things like that. But I'd say the minimum standard that all facilities, all 3G facilities in England should have as an FA, it's really a player, user, and safety performance sort of test. So it will cover you if should someone hurt themselves. The other idea behind getting them tested, the Football Foundation now works with the FA. So if a pitch fails really badly, the Football Foundation may step in and offer grants and things like that to have new pitches installed. I think I've probably rushed through that, but you're more than welcome to ask questions. I'm probably better at that. Thank you.
Oh, can I jump in and say thank you very much, Joe? It's quite interesting, and I obviously speak to a lot of customers. By the way, I'm Tim, the client manager at Replay. So a couple of questions. Well, one of the questions I get asked quite a lot, what is the big difference between the FIFA and the FA results? Because I know there's differences, and maybe you can explain that a little bit further. Yep.
So as I said, the FIFA Quality Pro standard works as a very higher sort of constraints value. So if I give the example of ball rebound, for FIFA quality, you're allowed between a rebound of 0.6 and 1 meter as the ball's dropped from 2 meters high. For FIFA Quality Pro, it's brought down to 0.7 and 0.85, so it has to fall in quite a specific number, whereas the FA follow the FIFA Quality, which is the wider one. Mm-hmm. But as I say, they have been known to be a bit more lenient around the numbers, so if an average of the field is actually getting 1 or say 105, over the 5 locations that we test for in the FA, they are more likely to pass it. Whereas for FIFA, when we upload the data to FIFA, they wouldn't allow that.
So also in line with that, Joe, and correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is you do a FIFA test, it's a pass or a fail. Whereas the FA test, as you did mention in your presentation, you get that potential 3-month window if there are what we call remedy works that can be carried out. Yeah. So for a FIFA test failure, you would have to have a retest.
Well, yes,
generally.
Yes, generally, if you fail a FIFA test, you will have to have a full retest completed.
Okay.
There are certain things that you can do when we are on site completing the test, and where if we feel like one of the areas is failing, but we could get a maintenance track to complete works there and then, we would retest that area there for you on the day. Not everyone does this, but we will retest for you on the day and refilm the test. So we have the evidence to say that it is passed on that day without charging full retests and things like this.
I assume that would be subject to the issue that's potentially raised.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Joe, we just have a question from Owen. As part of the registered test, what is the minimum maintenance that needs to be done, i.e. weekly brush, monthly top dress, and do the sites have to demonstrate this with records?
Yep. So, Owen, basically, the level of maintenance, and Tim will probably even know better than I will, depends on the amount of uses the pitch is having. I think it's generally every 20 hours. I think for a sort of an 11-side use that we recommend.
Just to jump in, Joe, sorry, the FA do state for every, I think it's on their letters as well, I've seen, where for every 10 hours of use, there's an hour of maintenance. It may be slightly extreme and probably not cost effective, but that may also be a case of just checking seams, clearing litter, things like that. So I'll talk about that a little bit in a short while as well.
What was sorry, Michelle, what was the end of the question? Oh, documenting.
Yes.
Yeah, so as part of the FIFA standards, the FA haven't asked us for it yet, but as part of FIFA standards, we are asked to take a photo of any logbooks that you have where you have logged the maintenance.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Drop them in the chat or raise your hand. No.
If you think any throughout, I'll stay on until the end and you can.
Yeah. Okay, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. And just to reiterate, if you do need any help through SportsLabs, Joe, I'm sure will be more than happy to help. And just slightly aside from this session today, it's not just about 3G pitches, hockey pitches, natural pitches, and so on. And there's a lot more information on their website. So yeah, I do appreciate Joe coming in today. Thank you very
Absolutely.
much.
No worries. Oh,
another question. Sorry,
one more question.
That's okay.
That's from Sean. What is the requirement for testing in NLS region feeder league step 7 clubs?
So at the moment, I believe it's just FA standard, but should you get promoted, then you will have to get your pitch tested to FIFA. So it's a bit of a grey area because a lot of the older pitches may not now meet the requirements of FIFA. So you will want to go up, and you'd have to ask for dispensation from the FA on where they go with that, because obviously you want to move up the leagues, but then your pitch may not meet it, and it's very difficult and obviously not cheap to do. But I'm pretty sure it's FA, Sean.
Yeah, thumbs up. So I think Sean's happy with that response. So we're going to move on to Tim and replay maintenance and the maintenance top tips for your 3G pitches. Over to you, Tim.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Good morning again, everybody. I'm back. Again, thank you to Joe for more in-depth on the high level of the FIFA and FA testing. But the little bit that we wanted to add on to that is just some guidance on what expectations are, some of the things that you should be looking out for and doing on your own 3G pitch from an in-house perspective. And we've got a case study coming up as well on a particular site that we looked after at Burnley Football Club, which some of you may be familiar with. So I'll move swiftly on. If you do have any questions as well, we'll be happy to answer them at the end. Just raise your hand if you want to speak, or just drop a little message on the system. Michelle will pick those up for you. And again, we are recording the session if you want to share that with anybody at a later date. An entrance is always, it's good to have a tidy entrance, as bad as that sounds in some ways. A lot of the time we do see where you've got these issues around the entrance. People wear boots on muddy natural turf pitches and bring the same boots onto your 3G pitch, and it starts to build up over a number of years, a number of months, and you can start to see issues like we're seeing on the pitches there, where you're getting sort of contamination, flooding, etc. So get some entrance mats, boot brushes, try and police it if you can. Bins for spectators is always useful as well, because we see so many plastic bottles, crisp packets, etc. around pitches when we're coming on site to do our specialist maintenance. Signage for users is always good. Advice on do's and don'ts. They vary a little bit from surface to surface, but generally with a 3G pitch, it's just your common sense stuff. And hopefully it sort of advises around the types of footwear to use for when you're using the surface, and of course for spectators, you know, but whereas they often will take advantage or not be aware of sort of any issues. But bins are always good, entrance mats, brushes and things like that. That maintain the levels. So Joe alluded to it earlier when we're talking about 3G pitches and the infill levels, and I don't, hopefully they're quite clear on that picture, but you can see the top picture, again, little infill, and you can see the sort of wear that the pitch is experiencing with lack of infill. It degrades the surface a lot quicker. The infill's there to protect the fibres, as Joe mentioned, create the shock absorbency, and also it improves the play dynamics. So get your infill levels checked. Replay can help with that. We do a free survey, so we can check your infill levels if you're unsure. Some of the things you can do yourself, if you look at the further two pictures, you look across those surfaces, and these are after a replay maintenance revive visit. They are quite shiny, and they're very green looking. Now, you would expect a pitch to be green. However, after a decompaction, the surface should see some black rubber crumb starting to sort of lift up, and you sort of see that within the carpet itself. That shows that the infill levels are at a reasonable level. Doesn't mean they're correct and fully right, and they should also be checked regularly. However, if you're starting to see that green and that shine and the flatness to the carpet pile, always get your surface infill levels checked, because it will help prolong the life of the carpet. And you don't really want to see that top picture, because that can be quite an expensive issue, getting patch repairs or even the surface fully replaced, because it will start and become compacted and firm and cause an issue for users. Rotate the play. I don't know if this is the best example of photographs we've found for you on here, but and it sort of goes back to the infill levels and topping up. This is quite an older surface, but both these penalty spots that have been patched previously are on the same surface. Now, when we talk about rotating the use, often 3G pitches, full-size pitches, or the smaller ones that are split between 2 or 3 pitches for 5-a-side, 7-a-side, etc. They often get used at the entrance end first. So if you've got pitch 1, 2, and 3, pitch 1 gets used even if the people have booked pitch 3. And what happens is you can see more wear and tear, and the picture, the lower picture is the lazy end, as we call it, pitch 1, where you're getting more use on that particular area. Both these spots need repairing clearly, and the top picture shows a common standing foot area, but also to sort of reiterate the infill top up that's needed. But you can see there's a lot more wear on the lower picture, which is at what we call the lazy end, or the pitch 1, which is nearer to the entrance of the surface. So if it can be policed or patrolled, make sure that people are using the furthest away pitch, and rotate those pitches on a regular basis to get an even wear across the surface. And again, keep an eye on those penalty spots, because those both need repairing, just for the record. Another important thing, and again, Joe mentioned it within his SportsLabs presentation, the nets, fence, dugouts, anything that's equipment on the surface should be checked on a regular basis. especially if you get some unauthorized access. And when I talk about unauthorized access, I mean people getting onto the surface when they shouldn't overnight and things like that. You often get vandalism, people swinging on goals. These goal nets are in very poor condition. It don't look great. It's, you know, it's can be the difference between a goal and not a goal, as we've probably seen previously on TV. But it's also the goals start to deteriorate and lose wheels and things like that, and that can be a serious health and safety issue. And you are responsible for the maintenance of your pitch. So it's always very important to keep an eye on these things, get them repaired, patch them up if that's the case, or get replacements in. Goals, fencing, kickboards, things like that. Just do that as part of your weekly checks, and keep an eye on these things, because it's really important that you're not held responsible for anybody having an injury. Weeds do appear, moss appears all around a perimeter, usually of artificial sports surfaces, including 3G pitches. You can get treatments that you can buy over the counter. Always follow the instructions, and maybe spot test if you need to. Good place to spot test possibly would be underneath that bin. I don't know, but certainly spot test areas that, you know, that are obviously in the non-playing area, just to make sure they don't cause an impact on the actual surface integrity itself. You can, once killed off with moss, get that up with a stiff brush or a hoe or something of that implement. Get rid of it, get it off the surface. It doesn't look great for starters, and people start to tread it in and carry it across the rest of the surface and cause a bigger problem. So always keep an eye on those areas as well. Just to mention briefly floodlights, it's important to check them. Health and safety, we are getting into sort of lighter nights where hopefully they won't be used as much, but it's still always important to have the lux levels checked, because they have to be a certain level for safety. I'm not an expert on floodlights, but it's important to check them. You can get LED replacements that are more cost effective. In that sense, over the long term, and we do work with people and partners that can help with that sort of a query. We'll come back to your question in a minute, Owen. Thank you very much. But yeah, always get those checked, health and safety, wiring and things like that. It's an annual check, and you can get all the lenses checked, bulbs replaced, etc. Going back a little bit to around that perimeter area, as you can see, we turn up to a lot of pitches that are in poor condition. So leaves and things like that, if they're left on a surface, they'll break down, collect muck, dirt and dust, and basically contaminate your surface and cause a lot of problems. So keep them off the surface. Get a leaf blower, get them all into one corner, bag them up. You can buy kit and equipment that will lift the leaves off the full surface, and you can do that as part of your weekly maintenance. So it's always quite good for doing that. Excuse me. You get more moss growth with the leaves, because obviously they'll sit under there, they create shade, and moss loves a bit of shade, don't need much soil, etc., to start growing. So yeah, keep an eye on those perimeters. Excuse me. Joe mentioned this before, the lines and things like that. You can see it's quite an older pitch here, but you can see where the lines are starting to lift. That can be a serious hazard for users. Somebody gets the foot caught in that, goes over, they're off to the solicitors, and you're getting a fine, or you're getting a lawsuit against you, and it can be quite expensive if somebody has a lot of time off work. So always keep an eye on these things. If you've got a regular maintenance contractor, ask them, because they'll usually have something in place where they'll re-stick those lines. If they start separating more than round about 4 millimeters, then you may need patch repairs. So if they'll abut one another, like my hands, as you can see, they'll re-stick down, that's okay. When they're starting to move apart, you stick them down, you've still got that gap, so they may need patching. So always ask your maintenance provider. Replay include up to so many linear meters of re-sticks within their revive visits. Painted lines can fade. Obviously, they usually last around 12 months, give or take. So it's always worth topping those up, getting the lines repainted. Excuse me. If you do need to repaint them, get them done before they fade completely, just to save yourselves a few quid, because overmarking lines is a lot easier than setting them out and takes less time. Excuse me. as we mentioned earlier, your maintenance regime. So that piece of kit that you can see on there is probably ideal, perfect for a full-sized 3G pitch. Weekly brushing of the surface. You can also get a toe behind leaf collector. There's an Aussie clean sweep. There's a sweeper collector that you can get that helps you pick up the leaves and things like that. But you're about keeping that surface clean and getting it, aggravating those fibres and aggravating the infill again to sort of redistribute that. So it's always good to have some decent kit on board. I'm going to just sort of talk about a case study that we had for Burnley Football Club. This was back in 2021, if I remember rightly. We've maintained their training pitch for several years, and it's coming towards the end of life. It was installed in 2010. Now, your average life of a 3G pitch is around 10 to 12 years, roughly, depending on usage, maintenance, where it's positioned, footwear, and a hell of a lot of other things as well can impact the life of that surface. This pitch itself was their training pitch. The sort of academy teams, the full team, the professionals all played on this pitch, especially this time of year when the grass pitches weren't in a great condition. So it got a lot of use, and we were maintaining it on a regular basis with our Revive process. I got approached by the grounds person to ask if there's anything they could do, because the surface was, because of its age, was starting to become a little bit worn and compact. Lower level infill was starting to become a little bit firm, and because of the amount of use, the fibres were struggling to come back upright again. So as you can see on there, it looks very green again. It wasn't really in the condition to accept any more rubber crumb and infill. So we offered our renovate process, which is a deeper decompaction to lift the lower level infill and crumb. So if I move on to the next slide for you, you can see that in action. So we've added no rubber crumb to this surface. We've just gone over it with our renovate process, which is some heavy duty brushing in simple terms to lift that lower level. And you can see the lines on there where the rubber crumb's been almost, it's fully decompacted at the lower levels, lifting the fibres back upright. The slightly longer picture to the right, you can see where we've just done the first pass to regulate the infill. And what that's done is, once we've lifted, you can't play on that surface when you've lifted all that rubber crumb, of course. So it just needs re-regulating again to allow the surface to give it more shock absorbency, to use Joe's terms from SportsLabs, but also the play dynamics again to be restored. I'll just move on to the next one where we've finished, and you can see where that's been fully regulated. The infill's now been decompacted and the fibres into a back upright state. Burnley still use that as a training pitch, where their original inquiry was whether they needed to actually resurface it. So we do carry out maintenance there, and that surface has been re-regulated and the infill brought back up. So it is a safer and a suitable pitch for, well, now a potentially Premiership team. I think they were actually in the Premier League at that point, but I can't remember fully. But yeah, so they're still using that pitch, but I think it's now getting to that 12, nearly 13 years of age. So depending on where they finish up in May, they could have a new pitch down there. So that's me done. So obviously any questions, I noticed Owen did ask one, so please feel free to ask any questions if you've got any.
I don't know if you can see Owen's question, Tim, but it says,
Yep.
Do we know if there are any grants available to move over to LED floodlights?
I personally don't know of any grants, but I can certainly go and find out for you. We'll have your contact details, so we'll find out for you this end, and we'll get in touch with you on a separate note and let you know, because I'd need to go and investigate that for you. All right.
And then another one from Sean, back to pitch testing, one for you, Joe. What is the cost for the various test types, i.e. FA test, FIFA quality and FIFA quality pro?
We've kind of kept our retest costs all the same for the various ones. If places have multiple pitches, though, we will be able to offer multiple discounts and things like that. But generally, we stick to our main cost at the moment, which is about $14.50. but depending on varying different factors and things like that, we can look to bring that down. Generally, as well, with larger FA counties and things like that, if we can group together multiple pitches and do them all within the same few days, we can also look to reduce costs for you.
One for you, Tim. How long does the line painting process take?
It depends again, how many lines have you got? Generally on a 3G pitch, you'll often have the white inlaid lines. So they're the sewn in lines that, if I go back to the one of the slides where we can see there, so that's an inlaid line that you can see where it's the same carpet as the green bit. If you're having 4 or 5 asides on your full size pitch, 2 7-a-sides and 9-a-side, can be a day or two on site. It will also depend if it needs setting out and marking. So if it's a brand new pitch or the lines have faded and will need setting out using lasers and measures and things like that, it can take a little bit longer to do that process. And also, again, dependent on the weather a little bit, but we can put accelerants into the line marking to increase that curing time. So it's a tricky one. It depends how many lines you've got. Unfortunately, I can't give you a straight answer on that. I feel a bit like a politician.
Quinton, if you need some further advice and you want to send pictures of your pitch and things, we can advise on how long that would take and costs and things.
Yeah, let us know what you need and we can find out for you.
Yeah, certainly. Any other questions? No problem, Quinton. So Tim, you spoke about kind of your weekly maintenance. What's the sort of gold standard of weekly maintenance you would expect to see on a full-size 3G pitch?
From the industry perspective and guidance, it does vary, and it does vary from manufacturer as well. So if you've got a warranty and you've got a new pitch, follow those warranty information. But the industry standards, as a guide, we say up to 40 hours use, you should be brushing the pitch weekly. Over that, twice weekly. And again, checking the seams and things like that, penalty spots, topping those areas up. We will post some videos of showing how to top up the penalty spot areas if you're unsure after the presentation today. But yeah, on a weekly basis, you should be brushing it weekly up to sort of 40 hours of use. Anything over that, twice weekly, ideally. And again, it can also be down to time, money, machinery, and everything else as well.
Okay. Just going back to that previous comment about kind of record keeping, whilst Joe suggested that it's not a necessity, it is always quite good to keep your maintenance records just in case there are any issues. Further down the line, we've had a couple of facilities where there's been injuries on the pitch, and that's actually turned into a lawsuit. Luckily for us, we've got the passport system, so we have all the records of kind of our clients' maintenance, but it is always worth keeping that record of the maintenance that you've undertaken.
Absolutely. I think, and again, that is just, it just proves an example of, I mean, to plug passport a little bit, it is a great system because we can record everything that we do on a surface, and photographs before, during and after, and raise alerts to a customer. For example, those 2 photographs of penalty spots that I showed earlier, they're off an alert that we've sent to the customer to say, look, this pitch needs repairing, it's dangerous. You know, it's their decision to make on what they want to do with that, but we raise that alert to them for their decision. We're not a health and safety company in that sense, and we can just give guidance and advice on experience that we've got within the industry. But yeah, certainly something like that, and records of your weekly maintenance is always advisable, and it just shows that you've checked the pitch, checked seams, checked lines, penalty spots and things like that. You know, are the goals in good condition and so on.
Another question from Owen: do the FA publish this sort of guidance around maintenance, or is it Astro manufacturer dependent?
So my understanding is the FA do have a on their website somewhere, and again, it's something that I can probably dig out, that I've got a copy saved somewhere. We have a guide ourselves that Replay have, that's a couple of pages. It's just a generic guide, very similar to what we've talked about today. And the FA, I understand, do have a bit more information as well on their website, but it's finding it's a little bit tricky because there's a lot more information on there. But yeah, certainly it's something we can pass on.
Thank you. And question from Leo: what machine was used to decompact the pitch for Burnley?
It's our renovate process. So it's I don't know exactly what the name of the machine is off the top of my head, but it's our renovate process that's used to do that. It varies dependent on the surface and its condition. So something like that, we would have done a survey before and made recommendations for what we would suggest to help prolong the life of the surface. So yeah, it's more than just the standard decompaction that we carry out on our revive process, because that's what was required there.
Leo, we'll try and get as much information for you and send that over after this call. We do have a very, very good guy in the yard, though, that makes slight tweaks to our machinery. So it could be that it's not an off-the-shelf solution either. Okay. Any other questions before we wrap up for today? Again, Tim and I are always available. If you have any questions, we can also forward you on to Joe if you have any kind of FA testing requirements, questions specific to your pitch. Obviously, this session has been recorded, so if you want to send it to any of your colleagues or anything like that, that's you're more than welcome to do that. So if we don't have any more questions, I'll give it another. Oh, hang on. Oh, okay. Not a question. Thank you, Owen. That's very kind. If you don't have any questions, we will probably end it there. Our next session is on the 14th of March, and it's on. Oh, hang on. One more. Sorry. Are sand infill for hockey treated the same as for football? I'm assuming, Jasper, are you meaning testing or are you meaning maintenance? Can you just clarify for me? Both. So maintenance and testing. So one for both of you.
I'll let you go first, Joe.
The sand is similar on a hockey field, although most of the testing requirements come down to the carpet. The sand is there as a weight, but also as a stabilizer for the yarn. It's not a performance infill like we would call rubber on a 3G. It's a stabilizing infill, really, and it does have its benefits in hockey, and it does help with ball roll to make sure that the field is filled properly. But it's not the same really as the rubber infill.
Okay. For me as well, I would say that you probably should look at our last webinar, which was regarding sand-filled pitches. It's almost like you planned this. The maintenance is generally very similar. Again, slight variations of what recommendations are. But yeah, it's all on the previous webinar. I was rather will be here all day because I can waffle for England.
Jasper, I'll forward that link on to you after the session today.
I think there's another question, Michelle, as well. Sorry.
Yeah. A question from Steve. What machine would you recommend for brushing and collecting leaves?
There's a lot on the marketplace. The machine on the slide 11, I believe, that's one we provide. Funnily enough, it's our rebrush tractor. The brushes on the arms, etc., lift up, so you can get it through a single gated access. Ideal for brushing a pitch, but again, there are other ones out there. If you're just wanting something that collects leaves and things like that, there is the Aussie Clean Sweep, which is very useful for that process. But yeah, there's various different pieces of kit that you can use. Generally, a static brush or drag mat. As I say, it depends. I wouldn't advise using a small tractor or a quad bike that you use on natural turf pitches unless you're going to clean them down beforehand, because you're just carrying mud on and creating contamination. So if you can, keep it separate to the surface. Always get a bit of training. It's always important, because there's ways to use these machines on a surface. You don't want to be doing too fast or taking corners too sharply. There is a specific process of how to drag brush a pitch. So yeah, always check with the manufacturer. Usually you get provided with some training on these types of kit as well. So it all depends on where your budget sits.
And this is by no means a sales thing, but all of the products are available on our playersports.co.uk website. And Tim is always available. He likes, as you've noticed, he likes to waffle for England. So he will advise on any range of things that you need. Okay, I think that's it. Our next session is on the 14th of March and it's on hard courts and tracks. So hopefully you can join us then. If not, and if you have any questions, as I say, just drop me an email or Tim an email and just let us know. Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us, everyone, and we'll hope to see you on the next one. Take care.
Thanks, Joe. Cheers.
Thanks,
Thanks for having
Joe.
me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.